So let's go ahead and talk about New York. We're going to start and talk a little bit about an Essex County sale that happened the end of last year. But before we do that, we're going to get into how New York works as a state.
Yeah, so New York is a tax deed state, meaning that that the counties basically wait out the redemption period before they'll foreclose on. Now, one thing that's actually kind of interesting about New York here, I don't know if I have this listed here or not, but they actually treat their sales in Manhattan differently than they do their sales in the rest of the state. You can almost treat them like they're two separate, things in terms of how they operate, because the entire state pretty well operates like a tax deed state. But I think that that Manhattan itself operates with liens that they sell to institutional buyers.
Yeah, well, it's not just Manhattan, it's all New York City. So with New York City, they're going to offer liens, but just like Shade said, to some type of institutional buyer. Nassau County actually will generally sell theirs to the public. So besides those two areas, every other county in New York is going to be a tax deed sale. And what the county does is, after a period of about 21 months of being delinquent, then they can go ahead and initiate and start that judicial foreclosure process. So for most of the state, it's tax deeds, in most of the counties.
Now, one thing that is unique about New York is that of all the states in the country, they seem to be one of the only that provide us with current images of the properties and sometimes interior images as well. And so, that's something that that we have enjoyed from New York properties. Whenever we can get information there, it's a little bit like Michigan. Michigan will usually take a picture of the property there in front. New York is kind of the same way, but if they have access to the property, they'll take interior images as well.
Yeah, well, that can make a huge difference in determining if you want to bid on the property. Now, they're going to use a premium bid system, essentially bid up the property in price until the high bid is established. And as far as the auctions, a lot of the auctions have moved online. And the over-the-counters, if they have any, actually end up being sold through the land banks. In fact, that's actually something we just got off with our coaching students about. Our member students was about the land banks.
Yeah. So we're going to go and check out this sale here in Essex County. When did this wrap up here?
January 21st.
Okay.
So it was a couple of months ago, a few months ago, and I'm just kind of picked out some of the properties here on this list. You can see that 15,000, 8,000, 17,000. But we're going to look at a couple of ones individually. This first one here, I really kind of like it. We had actually talked about it with the coaching students before the auction took place. It was pretty new built, and it's just your good 3-bedroom, 1-bath type home.
How much did it sell for? Oh, 63,000. Yeah, that's an awesome property. There's a lot of reasons why we love houses like this. Number one is its simplicity as a house. It's very straightforward, which is going to make it a lot easier here and cheaper for things like if it needs to be fixed up, if you need to do work on it, smaller house is typically going to be easier. But the other thing we really like about it is it's newer, built in '86. A very simple house built in '86 is new enough that it's going to have modern construction standards. So probably not going to have as many issues as as if it had been built in 1926. So we love to see that as well. Other things we can see about it, the roof looks great on it, but it probably hasn't been remodeled since '86. And so, looking at it, I mean, at least I think the windows are original there too. I don't think they've been updated. But it looks like we have some interior images of it too.
No, this is that's just a comparable, because they actually wasn't able to pull it up with the comparable on there. It just had the assessed value. But obviously pretty clean. You can see here is a current photo of it where it's again pretty clean. It's on a good half-acre lot. And here's some of the county kind of records about it. One thing that is interesting, and we were talking about this earlier, is so many of these areas have comparables. So if we were looking for comparables, we could try looking at some of these, and a lot of the county records will have something like that available. I was trying to look at this, just on its own. And there was a house that was really close to it that sold, recently, but this is actually not even really a good comparable, because it's about the same size, but it's a lot older house. But I just kind of wanted to show what properties were actually selling for kind of within this area.
Yeah, so certainly this property we're looking at here that was sold for 60,000 has the potential, to be valued here at 250,000 plus.
Yeah, I think, really safely valued at over 200,000, could easily be worth, like you said, $250,000 or more. So picked up for 60 grand, you can see why they were willing to pay up for it. It looks like it's still in pretty good shape.
Yeah, well, and ultimately, even if it's valued at even if it's valued at 200,000 or 180,000, they basically got it for a third of value. And at 33% or so, that's a pretty fair percentage to pay for a property like this. It would probably make sense. I don't think they overpaid for it. I would say that within that range, you could probably pay up to 40% for this property and still have a pretty good deal on it.
Yeah. Now this one here, I'm not quite sure about, but I thought I'd throw it on there because it really could be, a good opportunity. They ended up picking it up for about 55,000. As far as the county assessed value, they picked it up for about 25 cents on the dollar as far as the assessed value. It's about 9 acres, but it's all of these different lots together. So you've got, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different lots, and it's already been subdivided for a cul-de-sac. So it's possible that you could buy this and split it up into all of those lots, or create 2 or 3 big lots in there and really kind of make it an overall really profitable deal.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good chunk of land, quite a bit of land there, really. And it's interesting that it's already been subdivided, but it's owned by a single individual here. Yeah, we can see it's uncleared property there.
Yeah, it's kind of right here in this area. As far as looking up the county records, there's actually, a ton of different parcel numbers. So I just looked up the first one. I don't know if this structure is still there or not, but in kind of looking at the area here on even Redfin, they've went ahead and have already have all of these lots split up already. So even Redfin recognizes, these as individual lots, which I thought was kind of interesting. So, even if you were to say it was worth 250, they spend 50 grand for it, they could make 200. Even if they sold it for 200, or 150, they could still make 100 grand on it if they sold it for 150,000.
Yeah, it's an interesting property.
Yeah.
And a pretty good low percentage of value that they're paying. At least 25% on a property like that is not bad.
Yeah. We'll look at the map here quick, just to kind of show it to you. And then we'll move on to the next one.
Oh, it's interesting. So it doesn't. It does include that one that goes up against the road. It looks like there's a house. Oh, you know what? That house is just outside of it. That's what it is. You see the house there, right below it to the right. Yeah, to the right there. Yeah, that one. Yeah, I was looking at that house.
Yeah, so it's, all of these lots right here, all subdivided, ready to go. So kind of an interesting one for those that are looking at land, and the fact that Redfin is already recognizing, I thought was kind of interesting. But if you were to kind of look at each one of them, each lot is worth about 40 grand, and you've got 9 different lots there. This is
Yeah.
just an example of a little lot that sold that was pretty close to it, that sold for 46.
Yeah. Now, some of the things one of the things you may have to do if you were trying to sell all those lots individually is you'd probably need to build a road, in there to access, because it didn't look like a road had ever been built. But if you had a road there, it would certainly make all of those lots pretty appealing, to potential buyers, because each one's like an acre lot. They're pretty good building lots, I'll bet.
Yeah, well, and you could go ahead and subdivide it yourself, or you could just go ahead and sell it to somebody that was going to do it. This one here is kind of a little bit older, but you can see that, to a degree it's been repainted. It looks like the roof is new. It ended up selling for $15,000. And some of these properties didn't pull up very well on Zillow or Redfin. You can kind of see it here. And kind of looking at the value of it, located right here, here the value is, they did it at 135, and I wanted to see, well, what does some of the other mobile homes, now these might be a little bit better, and they very well could be, but I just want to see, well, what are the closest mobile homes selling for on their own piece of land, close to this. So these are going to be within a quarter of a mile within this location, which is pretty far because this is kind of rural area.
Yeah, I mean, so it really kind of shows you that the properties there are easily hitting 200,000 plus, in property values, even with mobile homes. So the property has the potential to actually have tremendous value.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they picked it up for 15 grand. So let's say that you just did nothing more than secure it, clean it up, maybe clean out the yard, you let somebody else rehab that. Could you sell that? Let's say you're into it 15 grand here, and let's say you even put another 15 grand into it, so you're into it 30. Could you sell it for 120,000 or 150,000 probably pretty quickly? Yeah, you probably could. So, I mean, even just securing the property and selling it as is, you picked it up for 15 grand. Could you sell it for 80 or 100 grand? Well, you probably could, and do a quick flip that way.
Yeah, I mean, really, even doubling your money on a deal like that would be worth it. If you could buy it and just turn around and sell it and double up, it would be worth it. But you could probably do better than doubling it up. And they bought it well enough that they could probably do better than that.
Yeah,
They could probably get 45,000 or 60,000 out of it if they were going to wholesale it.
yeah, I think they could do it pretty quickly. This was kind of an interesting one. I didn't have the time to really try to find comps. It would be a little bit more difficult. I'd have to probably use some of the county tools. But, this was kind of a big restaurant, and it looks like that there's actually, there's a living structure behind the property as well. Here's kind of the county information on it. You see it was built in
Effective year built
64.
in
Must have had a
85.
full-on rehab in 1985. Square footage. County's valuing it about 383,000.
How much did it sell for?
Oh, did I not show? 70 grand.
Wow. Wow, that they really stole that. It's sitting on 2 acres there, 2,400 square feet.
Yeah. Yeah, we can take a look here at the map.
Yeah, I'll bet they'll do pretty well with that.
So you can see here, here's the restaurant, here's the trailer, and maybe it's worth setting up as a restaurant again. Maybe it can be converted to something else. To me, it kind of looks like it could be. I mean, you could convert that easily to something besides a restaurant.
Yeah.
You've got the mobile home back there, or I think that's a
Oh
mobile,
yeah. Yeah, metal roof on it too.
but
On the mobile home. I mean,
yeah. But for 70 grand, you could probably do something with that. And
oh
even things like, that's a big outside cooler.
yeah, they paid almost nothing for this compared. I mean, the county's estimated value there of three something for. I mean, even if you were to say the property is valued at 350,000, at 70,000, they paid such a small percentage of it. They didn't even pay 20%. They're into it, a pretty small amount.
Yeah, well, you can see, they've got still the exhaust fan set up for it. A lot of these restaurants kind of went out of business during COVID. And the company that went out of business, and that's something we always look up, is the name of this old restaurant. And then we'll also look up to see who owned it. Was it owner occupied? Were they renting it? And, a lot of times we can find out a lot more about a property like this by doing a little bit of research on it and just seeing what we can find, because we might be able to find photos of the last time it was opened, photos of the interior. All of that kind of stuff is something that is probably going to be available online because most people were posting going to the restaurant.
Yeah, it really is nice if you when you find commercial properties, they're always more challenging to get comps on, but they're easier to obtain additional information on because people are going to post it or it's going to be listed, and it's usually by the address. So, or by the business name here, potentially. You can look it up either way.
Yeah. In fact, I didn't look it up. I'll do it quickly. Is it Emeralds?
Probably.
Yeah, Emeralds. But thought that was kind of an interesting deal.
Yeah.
This next one was picked up for 27 grand. And, you know, when I was looking at it, the roof looked good. It's had updated siding. You know, it's obviously an older home, but there's actually a home behind it as well. So you're kind of getting two homes. They picked it up for 27,000. Here's kind of some of the county information on it. It was updated in 1965.
Is the county estimated value there of like 100,000? Is that 106,000? How close is that to market, I wonder?
You know, they're putting it at 165,000 as far as the estimate.
Yeah, so the estimate on it is even better. Yeah, they really did really well with it there for picking it up for 25,000. I mean, they paid 10% of value for it roughly, you know, a little bit more than that, but they picked a very low percentage of value, considering it's a property that's valued more than 150,000.
Yeah, again, you could go ahead and just board it up, clean it out, change the locks, and then if you were to wholesale it for 75 or 80 grand, you could probably do that pretty quickly, double your money with the minimum amount of work. Or you could go ahead and, you know, try for, you know, going through and doing a rehab on the property. You know, Redfin had it at only 74,000, but from everything I was looking at the market, it was closer. I think that this, I don't know if that's going off old county assessed value or what's going on with it, but they did have some older photos from 2022. So you can kind of see what it looked like in 2022. It obviously needs some type of update, but
in pretty good condition though.
Yeah, I mean, if you were to go and repaint all of those cupboards, you know, give them a new look, obviously get a new stove, but little interesting. In some ways, I almost wonder if it was updated since then, because I noticed some things on this from the exterior portion that were updated that wasn't updated when the photos were taken.
Yeah, well, yeah, excellent purchase though. I mean, for 25,000, you've got so many options with that. I mean, yeah, you could triple up your money here if you wanted and just get out of it. You know, this property probably rents out for more than probably $1,200 a month or more.
Oh, I think it was closer to 1,600.
Yeah. Oh, this is another nice one. Oh, that's so nice.
Yeah, sold for 20,000. I mean, even if you were just saying it was worth 100 grand, you know, it's pretty decent shape, little small house. Well, not too small, but you know, pretty clean. And it's actually got a trailer next to it as well and a garage included in the back. So if you're kind of looking here, you can kind of see it behind there a little bit and see the side of it there. There's the side of the trailer. And then behind the house, you've got, you know, this this structure as well. Here you can kind of see both of them there.
Oh wow, that actually looks like it might be livable even too.
Yeah.
It's got a metal roof on it.
Well, this was built in 1992.
Yeah, it's so new. In fact, it's like the very first property that we were looking at. This one is very similar to it. Really simple house, you know, not much to it, but it's new enough, you know, built in 92. So all modern construction practices. It has additional structures there on the property. They paid $20,000 for it. That is such a steal.
Yeah, exactly. So it's, you know, these three right here, you know, they don't have a street side view on it. And then, you know, here is where in looking at it, when I was looking through the comps, they don't show the value here compared to really what it should be.
Yeah, well, it's clear. I mean, the county's estimate of 106, it's got to be at least 106,000. So for Redfin to say 69 is,
Yeah, I think Zillow. I thought I must have not clicked on the link on Zillow, but I think Zillow was like 123 on it. So there was kind of some discrepancy, and I did a quick view on it. But you're also, even though this is an older trailer that's next to it, that could still be another property to rent out. And renting out each one of these, when you pay 20 grand for it, paying 20 grand for it, you can rent this out because it's for probably $800 to $1,000 a month, maybe a little bit more than that. It's only about 700 square feet, 1 bedroom, 1 bath. But let's say you're $800 to $1,000 on that. You rent out the trailer as well for 700. You're bringing in $1,600, $1,700 a month of rent off of those two properties.
yeah, this property has tremendous income potential for the invested, the amount you're invested into it. I mean, for basically, you could pay yourself off within 2 years.
Yeah, in fact, I don't know if you remember this one, Shay. This was
Oh
actually
yeah,
purchased by one of our students. The market value is quite a bit higher than they show, but this was really about the condition of the property.
yeah,
And
that's right.
and so it's actually located right next to, kind of in a small college town within the area. And I don't want to give too much away about it because it's one of our students, but here you can see that he just barely put this out on the market,
Oh,
and
they
he's
did
renting
nice
it out.
rehab on it.
Well, I think
Or
that
was it
they
already
did.
done?
I think that he did add quite a bit to it, but I was able to find some older photos of it before it sold a couple of years ago, and it looked like it was really clean inside. That was one thing that and it's the reason that he was willing to pay 45 grand for it, was really because the condition of this property, was in such good shape that you could go in there, and now he's got a rental property that he's going to be renting out for almost close to $2,000 a month. And he had obviously had to put a little bit into it, but it was in such good shape when he bought it. I mean, you can even see from here how good a shape it is.
Yeah, well, and you can also tell that from like where it's located at, that yeah, the features there and the environment around it is pretty nice. I mean, you can see that that is actually a nice looking rock wall that they built there as part of the foundation for a walkout basement.
Yeah, and you've got an extra room down here. It's really kind of here in a pretty location, right next to the, kind of in the lake within this area.
Well, and
You got-
everything's been done too. Like, you see on the outside of the property, it has railing that's been built out there and a lot of additional things that have been built. It's whoever owned it, did a good job of completing everything and giving the house a nice look.
Yeah, well, it's kind of right here within this area where you've got this small college that's close by, really nice area surrounded by lakes. So, we just want to congratulate him. That was a great deal, and it's good to see that he's going to be starting to make rental income off it. That's awesome. We'll show one more and then I'll flip it back. This one is just a cheap old trailer, but it was picked up for 6 grand. So, when we have people that are talking about trying to get, some property for under 10 grand, structured property, sometimes it's going to be a trailer like this that you can pick up for 6 grand, kind of looking at the value within some of these. Here's a couple that sold, that are kind of older. You may need to do a little bit, but I mean, they're not that great inside, and it's this one kind of the same year, sold close by for 106. This one's the cheapest one I could find right now for 74,000. So, picking this property up for 6 grand, not too bad a deal. And, it'll probably be easy to even just turn around and flip it as is and, sell it for 25 grand, 30
Yeah.
grand.
Yeah, I mean, it's not good, I mean, if you were to put it on the market, it's the value on it, uh, certainly it's not going to be worth less than 60,000. So they picked it up for about 10% of value, and even then, you could probably sell it pretty quickly here if at that kind of a price point.
Yeah, well, and it was still occupied at the time, which means that it was still livable.
Yeah.
So overall, not too bad.